Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm really excited because I wanted to do a high-end version of my drugstore video of this. So a while back I did a drugstore starter kit video, and one of the top comments was a request to do a high-end version of this video. So that's what I'm going to be doing today, and I felt like I would incorporate a couple more steps in this routine, just because if you are looking to invest in a high-end product, I'm just going to kind of assume that maybe you are already a little bit familiar with makeup. Obviously these products will still be great for any beginner out there if you're looking to just start out by investing in a product. So I wanted to give you my top recommendations, and then I'll give you some tips as we go along. But if you're somebody who hasn't tried makeup at all, I would definitely recommend watching my drugstore version of this. I think drugstore makeup is a great way to introduce yourself to makeup, and then that way you don't have to like spend an arm and a leg, and you can kind of get a feel for what you might want to invest in as far as products go after you figure out what you end up reaching for the most and things like that. So this is kind of like the sequel to that video in my opinion, but anyway, I'm really excited to share everything with you guys. So I've got my starter kit right here. I decided to put it in one of my makeup bags that I designed. So this is our medium everyday bag. I love this size. We're actually currently sold out of this on its own, but this does come in the full bag collection, so I'll have that down below if you guys are interested. But this entire full face fits perfectly in here, so that's why I wanted to put it in this. We're gonna start off with complexion, and we'll move on to eyes and brows and things as we go. So keep in mind, this is a video that is kind of meant for beginners, but even if you're into makeup, this might be a good video to refer to if you're looking for a certain category to invest in. Say you've only experienced, drugstore mascaras up until this point, and you might want to invest in something high-end. If mascara is your favorite category of makeup, then, this might be helpful for you to at least hear my personal recommendations as far as like a place to start in the high-end world. So let's just get right into it. In my drugstore video, I did not mention a primer because I felt like that's kind of a little bit overwhelming for beginners when it comes to makeup. In this one, I did want to include one product that could be used as a primer because I felt like, again, this might be a sequel, so it might be for those of you who are a little bit more into makeup and you want to kind of spice things up a little bit. So I chose this right here. This is the Hollywood Flawless Filter from Charlotte Tilbury, and this is a primer, but it's also something that you can use in many different ways, which is also why I wanted to put it in here, because you can use it underneath foundation. You can mix it into foundation if you choose to have more of a glowy finish with what you're wearing, or you can use it as a liquid highlighter as well. So I just think overall it's a great product to have in your high-end collection. So I have the shade Light 2, and I'm going to go ahead and use this as a primer today. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of put this all over the face. I personally like to put it all over. You could focus it on just the high points or wherever you don't have texture, whatever you want. And also in my drugstore video, I did mention like a couple of brush sets. I wanted to give this brush set a shout out. I just recently purchased this, but it's one of the best like full brush sets that I've tried so far. So this is from Laura Lee Los Angeles, and it has face brushes and eye brushes. So for a starter kit, I think it's important to kind of have something that might give you that full range. So that's why I chose this. So these are the brushes I'm going to be using today to create my full look. So I'm going to go ahead and take the L11 brush, and I'm just going to use this to buff everything out all over the complexion. And hopefully you'll be able to see that it gives such a beautiful lit from within kind of a glow. This is something that's pretty foolproof. It comes in several shades, so no matter what skin tone you are, you'll be able to find something that works great for you. And it just gives an overall healthy glow, which is something that I feel like is important, especially when you're starting out with makeup. I feel like most people's biggest fear is looking like overdone or cakey or too powdery, and so this is a product that's going to really kind of set the stage for the rest of your makeup and make things look very natural and very healthy. I love how it looks all over the skin. If you don't want this much glow, you can skip this step. If you have oily skin, you can either skip it or just use it on the high points of the face, on the sides of the face instead of in the T-zone, but again, I like to use it all over. So moving on to complexion products, I actually have two different types of complexion products I wanted to recommend to you guys. The first one is more of a tinted moisturizer, and the other one is a foundation. Both are amazing for beginners. Obviously, that's what this video is all about. The tinted moisturizer that I wanted to recommend is this right here. This is my favorite. I've used this for years. It's the Bare Minerals Complexion Rescue Tinted Hydrating Gel Cream. If you're somebody that doesn't want too much foundation, or you feel like your skin is pretty even toned and blemish free, then this might be a great route for you if you just want that little bit of coverage, but you don't want to worry about it wearing off strange or things like that. This is going to be great. This is definitely a hydrating formula. So again, if you have very oily skin, you might want to skip this, but if you have dry skin or normal combination skin like me, this has been one of my favorite things, and it really does make a difference in the hydration of your skin as well. So I wear the shade Birch 1.5 in this. If you're somebody who wants to upgrade from a tinted moisturizer, because the product I talked about in my drugstore starter kit video is kind of similar as far as like the texture and effect that it gives. If you're not looking for that, if you want something that's an actual foundation, I think this foundation is a great place to start. It's very foolproof and it wears really well, and I feel like you can build up the coverage really nicely too. So that foundation that I'm talking about is the Wander Beauty Nude Illusion Liquid Foundation. I wear the shade Fair Light in this. I am going to layer them today. I don't normally do this, but just to kind of give you guys an idea of the coverage of this, and then we can show you the finish of this on top, I wanted to layer them. And I have actually in the past used this as more of a primer than a foundation, just because it provides such great hydrating benefits that I personally really enjoy it. So I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of that on the back of my hand with that same brush I just used from the Laura brush set, and I'm just going to apply this to this side of the face. I'm going to do one side of the face first so that you guys can kind of see the effect that it gives versus bare skin, and you'll see that it like evens out the skin tone a little bit, but it's not anything too crazy. It also gives like a cooling sensation to the skin, which is nice. I'm going to go ahead and take my sponge and press this down into the skin. I personally always like to use a brush and then a sponge when I'm doing my complexion. You could also use your hands with this. I did that for years and it works great. So if you're like in a rush and you're kind of minimalist, feel free to just use your fingers with this product. But hopefully you can kind of see, besides my blemish here, hopefully you can see that it just looks very natural, and the redness is kind of calmed down compared to this side, but it doesn't look overdone. So this product is great for anybody out there who wants that kind of an effect. If you just want to kind of look like you're not really wearing makeup, this would be a great product for you. I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing to the other side of the face just to even things out. And then I personally am going to layer up the Wander Beauty Nude Illusion Foundation just to show you how beautiful that foundation looks as well, for any of you guys who want a little more coverage than what this is giving. Keep in mind too, like a product like this is also great for just a basic evening out of the skin tone, and then what you can do is just take your concealer and spot conceal later. So it can really be a good versatile product, and honestly, even though this is a starter kit video, I would actually recommend having two different types of options just in case, you know, because there's some occasions where something like this might come in handy, and then other occasions if you're looking to have a little bit more of a full coverage glam situation, you might want like an actual foundation. So I'm going to show you guys how this looks on the skin. Again, this is the Nude Illusion Foundation from Wander Beauty, and I'll just take the doe foot applicator and kind of dot it around the complexion. The thing that I love about this foundation is how it wears on the skin. I think that's very important, and it's something that is kind of hard to find when it comes to a foundation. Well, I shouldn't say that, but I guess it's one of the hardest things to learn to trust in a foundation, especially as a beginner. That's probably one of the things that people are the most concerned about, is like, okay, I don't want my foundation to look too cakey. I don't want it to wear off funny or be too obvious that I'm wearing foundation. And that's honestly one of the reasons why I picked this foundation for this starter kit video, because again, I feel like it's a really great, reliable foundation, and it wears very, very well on the skin. It also blends out easily. The coverage is buildable, so it's very foolproof, and I think it's very approachable for beginners and really easy to work with. So I'm just blending that out again with the same Laura brush, and then I'm going to take my sponge and go over the entire complexion. Again, I like to use a brush and then a sponge. I feel like the brush is able to kind of evenly distribute the product all over the skin, and the sponge helps to kind of take up any excess product and get rid of any brush lines if there are any. I should mention that I purposefully chose this sponge right here. This is a Thrive Cosmetics sponge. I'll have all of this listed and linked down below to make it easy for you guys, but this sponge is my favorite beauty sponge that's high-end. I obviously really enjoy the original Beauty Blender as well. I do think that's one of the best sponges out there too, but if you're looking to invest in a sponge, I would start with this one. It's my personal favorite. I'm just gonna kind of take what's left on the sponge and tap this on the eyelid just to take care of discoloration there. But as you can see, that gives very nice coverage. The finish is very natural. And again, it wears so nicely. I feel like this is a great place to start if you're somebody, again, who wants a little bit of coverage, but you don't want to look cakey or heavy. I love how this looks. And I especially love how it pairs with a primer like the Charlotte Tilbury one that I talked about, because again, it just adds to that natural, healthy skin kind of a glow. All right, so we're making progress on the complexion. For concealer, the concealer that I personally would recommend to literally anybody is so good. I love this concealer so much. It's the Laura Mercier Flawless Fusion Ultra Longwear Concealer. Okay, so just like my drugstore video of this, I always like to pick up 2 shades in a concealer formula, one for under the eyes for brightening, and then one that matches my personal skin tone for blemishes. If you're somebody who doesn't really experience blemishes, then you might not need to get a second shade that matches your skin tone, but for the concealer under the eyes, try to choose a shade that's 1 shade lighter than your foundation. You could do 2 shades lighter if you wanted to, but I personally like a little bit more of like a natural look for the under eye area. I don't like that super stark bright under eye. So if it's a little bit closer to your skin tone, that's gonna look more natural. I'm just dotting it underneath the eyes. And then I'm gonna go ahead and take the darker color. By the way, this first color was the shade 1N. The second shade I have is 2N. And I'm gonna use this over top of blemishes just to give that little extra bit of coverage. For concealer, I always like to blend out the blemish concealer first because it's darker, and I don't want to take the lighter concealer and plop it on top of the blemishes because that will actually emphasize it. So that's why you want to have a concealer that matches your skin tone, because that way when you apply over blemishes, they just disappear into the surrounding skin instead of like being highlighted by a brighter concealer. So after that, I'm going to go ahead and just take my sponge and press out the concealer underneath the eye. And it's important here to kind of apply it and start blending it out a little bit lower than where your fine lines are. I'm doing this so you can see where my eye wrinkles kind of form when I smile or when I'm expressive. And that's a good way to avoid any creasing, is to apply most of the product in the darker circles underneath the eye, and then as there's less product on the sponge, then you can bring it up under the eye a little bit more, and it's not going to crease as much. It usually creases a lot when there's too much product in that area. It's natural to have a little bit of creasing when you have smile lines, so don't freak out if that happens to you, but that is just a tip that will help prevent it as much as possible. I do notice though that this particular formula really does a good job at not creasing. That's one of the reasons why I recommended it. It's one of my favorites, and it's just the perfect in between like a hydrating formula and something that's going to be long wearing, and it has great coverage as well. It's just a good all-around reliable concealer in my opinion. Okay, so I'm really happy personally with where my skin is at. I think that I have just the right amount of coverage, so I'm really happy with that. Moving on to a powder. So the powder that I would recommend if you're looking for a good loose translucent powder to start with is definitely this one right here. This is from Thrive Cosmetics. It's the Filtered Effects Soft Focus HD Setting Powder. The reason why I love this so much is because it has hyaluronic acid in it, so it's actually like a hydrating setting powder. So setting powder is something that is crucial to making your makeup last, but I feel like one of the reasons why a lot of people might not want to use it or they're too scared to use it is because they're afraid that it's going to look cakey. This one does not. This one is very smoothing, and throughout the day, it just continues to melt into your skin and hydrate the skin even more, while still letting your makeup, last all day long. That's another reason why I love it so much. It gives the skin a nice velvety finish. It has a matte finish. It's a translucent color, so it's gonna work on any skin tone. And yeah, I just think it's one of the best high-end translucent powders out there. So if this is your first high-end translucent powder purchase, I really don't think you'll be disappointed. I've tried several, and this is one of my favorites, if not my all-time favorite high-end powder. And to set the face, I'm using the Laura Lee Los Angeles L12 brush. This is a perfect brush for underneath the eyes to set with powder. And I normally kind of focus powder on the T-zone for me personally and over blemishes because in the T-zone I get a little bit more oily. If you don't get oily in the T-zone, you might only need to set the areas that you applied concealer. If you have oily skin, you'll want to set anywhere that gets oily. So you'll want to also set the perimeters of the face as well, which I do a lot anyway. I feel like it helps my bronzer and blush apply a little bit better, especially when I'm using powder products for those categories, which I am today. I chose powder products because I feel like they're just easier to work with as a beginner than a cream. So I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of set the entire face. I just love this powder. Hopefully you can see how flawless and smooth that made my skin. Again, if you're somebody who's a little bit concerned about the powder being too powdery, take your sponge. By the way, this is a damp sponge. I made sure to get out all the excess water before using it. But if you do that, and after foundation and after powder, you can actually go back in with this and just lightly kind of press down, and it's going to smooth things out a little bit more. It's gonna pick up any of the excess powder and it's gonna press that down into the skin and make it look so natural and smooth. All right, so I'm really happy with where my makeup is right now. Moving on to bronzer, I actually have 2 recommendations. Both I recommend equally, but I wanted to give you both options. So for bronzer, I personally really love the Fenty Beauty powder bronzer. These are the Instant Warmth bronzers. I personally use this shade right here, which is called Into Sun, and it's really, really beautiful and light. So it's perfect for my skin tone, but this has an amazing range in these bronzers. So again, no matter your skin tone, you would be able to find one that works really well and flatters your skin tone perfectly. The other bronzer I would recommend is the Benefit Hoola bronzers. I personally love the shade Hoola Light. I have pretty fair skin and I tend to be heavy-handed with bronzers. So for me, these shades work really well for my skin tone. It just helps me not go too overboard, if that makes sense. So yeah, I really enjoy both of them. I think I'll use the Fenty one for this video because I just recently used the Benefit one in another video. So I'm just gonna take this on an angled brush. This also comes in that Laura Lee Los Angeles set, and this is the L14 brush. And I'm just gonna find my cheekbones and kind of start pressing underneath to start to sculpt and warm up the complexion. Again, I personally feel like creams are a little bit more difficult to work with, so I would recommend starting out with a powder bronzer, and this is where tools really are important. So having a brush like this that's a little bit more angled, that's gonna help pick up the right amount of product, is really gonna help you with the overall finished look. So the right tools really do make a difference. I recommended a lot of amazing brushes that are drugstore or more affordable in my last video, so if you're not wanting to invest in like a higher end brush set, definitely check out my last video. But this set is actually very affordable for what you get. I think it was only $45 for all of these brushes, and you get this bag with it too. So it's a great place to start. I'm just running a little bit of this bronzer on the sides of the nose as well. But as you can see, it warmed up my complexion perfectly, but it's not too much. It doesn't look overdone. It looks like I actually got a little sun-kissed. I always like to take my powder brush and just go over the edges. I feel like that helps blend things even further. So I'm just gonna make sure to do that just with whatever's left on the powder brush. I didn't add any more powder to this. All right, we're gonna go ahead and finish up the complexion, and then we'll move on to eyes and brows. I feel like my brows need to be filled in, but we'll get to it. So for highlighter, I was really thinking hard about what highlighter I would recommend for beginners. And again, if this is like the sequel to the drugstore version of this video, I felt like I should recommend a highlighter that's a little bit more intense, and that's just really great for glam occasions. So I feel like everybody has to try this, and so that's why I wanted to put it in here first, or recommend it to you as a beginner's highlighter. This is the Becca Shimmering Skin Perfectors, and I have the shade Moonstone. They have an amazing range in this as well, so again, no matter what your skin tone is or your personal preference in highlighter color, you'll be able to find something that works great. I'm going to use the L15 brush from that same set, and I'm going to start building this up on the cheekbones. Did I say what shade this was? I'm using the shade Moonstone. I can't remember if I said that or not. I'm just gonna buff this onto the high points of the cheeks. Now a little bit goes a very long way with this, and I'm kind of going in a C shape up on top of the brow and then right here. Trying not to get it too close to the eyes, just right on the cheekbone. Same thing on this side of my face. And then I'm going to take a little bit down the center of the nose and on the Cupid's bow. And then again, one of my secrets that I always love to do is I'll go back in with my sponge and just kind of press things down Obviously, a setting spray will also help, which I will have a recommendation for that in a minute. But if you're worried about it looking too powdery, using your sponge really helps to just melt things into the skin and throughout the day. Keep in mind, like the warmth of your face is going to melt the products even more, and also the weather outside or whatever. It's going to help to kind of melt things together and things will look better as you wear it. So for blush, I definitely felt like I had to recommend blushes from Bare Minerals. So I picked 3 to show you, but I have a top pick. So I'll share with you my personal favorite shade, but I would definitely recommend starting out with the Bare Minerals Gen Nude blushes. I think these are incredible. Again, the range is great, and they're not too difficult to work with. They all have more of a matte finish to it, and I feel like for a beginner with blushes, this is a great place to start. My personal favorite shade is this one right here called Beige for Days. It's great for any blush beginner because I feel like if you're somebody who is afraid to wear blush, this is a great place to start. It's not too much. I'm gonna go ahead and apply this as I talk about it. It looks kind of brown in the pan, but it's actually a little bit of a peachy shade, and I feel like it blends into bronzer so nicely, and it just gives a little bit of life back to the skin without looking too pinky or leaving you looking like a clown. Now, personally, I love a little bit of color in the cheeks, but for a beginner, if you're scared to use blush, a tone like this might be really great to start with. I'm going to layer up a little bit of a brighter shade. I'm going to use the shade Pretty in Pink because, again, I personally love pink cheeks. I love a little bit of color, and I think it just makes the skin look really healthy. So I'm going to layer this on top. By the way, I'm using the L13 brush for this. But as you can see, this formula is very buildable, so it's super easy to work with. You're not going to go overboard, and even if you do go in heavy-handed, it's going to look really natural and beautiful. Okay, I really love that. I also love this shade called That Peach though, if you're looking for a good peachy tone. But again, they have so many different colors, and I feel like they're all great to choose from. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe off any foundation that got on the lips. All right, moving on, I'm going to do my brows next. This is definitely what I would choose for a brow pencil if you're looking to upgrade to a high-end brow pencil. I just love this one so much. It's the Benefit Precisely My Brow Pencil, and this comes in so many different shades. There's a lot of good high-end brow pencils, honestly, but this is the one that I would recommend because for me, I need something that's gonna last all day long, and this does for me. So I have the shade 4. I'm just gonna go ahead and fill in my brows. I like to fill in the outer portions of my brow first, and then I kind of create the shape in the front of the brow a little bit using a really light hand, and then I will draw on little hairs right here because I don't really have that many brow hairs in the front. And then I always flip my pencil over and brush through. That helps it look so much more natural. All right, my brows are filled in. I feel like that's as good as it's gonna get for now. So now moving on to eyes, I'm actually gonna make sure that there's no concealer or foundation that creased in the eyes, and then I'm gonna take a little bit of that Thrive Cosmetics powder, just a tiny bit of what's left in the cap, and I'm gonna kind of set the eyelids to prep it for eyeshadow. So for an eyeshadow palette, I did want to recommend an eyeshadow palette in this video. I didn't do one in my drugstore video because I felt like eyeshadow was a little bit too complex for a beginner, so I just recommended putting bronzer in the crease, and there's just a really simple eye look you can do with just your bronzer, blush, and highlighter that you already have. But for this video, I felt like it would be a natural progression to kind of do a little bit of a simple eye look for those of you who want to know what palette to start with. So I chose the Persona Cosmetics Identity palette. This is what it looks like, and I chose this because I really feel like this is a great place to start. It's going to give you all of the nice neutral, natural looking colors, and there's a good mix of cool tone, neutrals, and warm tones in this palette, so no matter your skin tone or undertone, it's going to really flatter everybody in my opinion. So I'm actually going to start with the shade Humble, and I'm going to use this on the L18 brush, and I'm going to use this as my base and just kind of apply it all over the lid from lash line almost all the way up to the brow bone. I'm stopping a little bit underneath the brows just to kind of create a nice even tone across the lid. Next, I'm going to take the shade Charming with that same exact brush, and I'm going to really lightly start to kind of use windshield wiper motions in the crease, and then I'm going to drag it down on this outer third of the top lid just to start to define the eyes a little bit. Same thing on this side, and remember, a little bit goes a long way with eyeshadow, so it's better to work with small amounts and blend, and then once there's less product on the brush and you still want more definition, you can go in with a little bit more at a time. it's so much easier to add on to your eyeshadow than it is to try to remove, you know, a heavy hand and then a big glob on your eye, if that makes sense. So just keep that in mind as you're doing your shadow. I'm also going to take the exact same brush and I'm just going to pinch it with whatever's left on the brush. And I'm going to apply that along the lower lash line a little bit. I actually did dip back into the palette for this side because I feel like I used most of it on this eye. So you always want to make sure that both eyes look nice and evened out. Okay, so for me, for an everyday look, I think I'll dip into maybe this shade right here. This is called Gold Digger. And I'm going to take the L19 brush from that same Laura Lee set, and I'm going to dip into this shimmer. You could also just use your finger if you would like. That will give you a more intense payoff. So if you're a beginner, maybe just try using a brush. You do want to make sure to tap off the excess if you're doing your eyes after your complexion. But I'm just going to go ahead and apply this onto the eyelid, just all over, basically in the empty space where we didn't have any eyeshadow yet. This is just a really nice, easy to wear gold shade. I am going to take my brush that we just used with the brown shade and I'm going to buff the edges here. It's important to go back in and buff the edges after layering because it just helps the shadows move into each other so much more seamlessly. All right, I'm going to go into the L17 brush and I'm going to take that same Gold Digger shade and I'm going to apply this across the lower lash line, starting on the inner portion and stopping about halfway across. All right, and then I'm going to take the shade Sassy from the palette, and I'm going to apply this color in the inner corner of the eye to brighten. And I also like to take what's left on the brush with that same shade and just apply it underneath the highest point of the brow. I'm just taking that brush that we used with the brown shade, and I didn't add any more onto the actual brush, but I'm just taking that and kind of buffing out the edges again to make sure it all blends out into the eye area nicely. So for eyeliner, I definitely felt like, you know, a high-end beginner's kit or whatever should include some sort of an eyeliner. And I personally would definitely recommend the Urban Decay 24/7 eyeliners. They have so many different colors in this. So if you're somebody who is into eyeliner or needs an eyeliner or feels like you need an eyeliner, these are great ones to start with, in my opinion. It's just a pencil. I'm going to use the shade Demolition. Now, I'm not somebody who usually wears eyeliner often, honestly, but for this video, I wanted to include it just in case you are looking for an eyeliner recommendation. I'm going to use the shade Demolition. It's just a nice deep brown, and I'm going to line the outer third of the top lash line only. I feel like that just kind of like makes the lash line appear a little bit thicker. And it's not too complicated. Like I'm not doing a wing liner because that's where things can get pretty intense. I'm just starting about in the center of the eye. And then as I do move to the edge, I like to make the line a little bit thicker. But you really can't go wrong with this. All right. So that's eyeliner. For mascara, the first high-end mascara that I definitely thought of as soon as I was planning this video was the Thrive Cosmetics Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara. This is my favorite high-end mascara. I feel like it will work for so many people. It's a tubing mascara, so it's a little bit of a different formula. If you aren't familiar with the tubing mascara, it's going to take a little bit of time to get the hang of, but once you do, it's so amazing and so worth it. So how I like to use this is I will just take the mascara and just kind of blink into the brush, and I feel like the mascara just does the rest of the work for you. And a tubing mascara is great because it does not smudge or flake. So that's one of the main reasons why I've loved this for so many years. Is because I have naturally pretty long lashes, and if a mascara smudges or flakes on me, it's over. It's one of my pet peeves actually, so this is one that never does, and I have literally gotten all of my friends and family hooked on this. My mother-in-law actually had the hardest time finding a mascara that worked for her, and I had recommended other ones that worked well for me, but they just would keep smudging and flaking, and then I had her try this one, and this is what she's been using ever since, and it's become her favorite mascara too. And then I got my older sister hooked on it, and I got my other sister-in-law hooked on it. It's just so good. Okay, so I did get a little mascara on top of the eyelid. I'm just gonna wait for that to dry before buffing it off. So this is another one of those products that's kind of an add-on. Like it's not super necessary, but I wanted to include it because I do think it is necessary once you're kind of getting into makeup, and if you're starting to get more used to seeing yourself wearing makeup. Lip liner, it's essential in my opinion, and so, whoa, it's not focusing. I love this lip liner right here. This is from KKW Beauty. I think they make some of the best lip liners out there. And again, there's a huge shade range, so you're gonna be able to find anything that will work for you. I'm gonna use the shade Nude 0.5 For a beginner, I would recommend using something that's going to match your natural lip color as close as possible. This one definitely does. It's a little bit more on the pinkier side, but it really just looks like my lips at the end of the day. And I always like to kind of line and fill in the lips with this. I do feel like lip liner is optional for every day, but again, if you're somebody who's starting to kind of get into makeup and you're starting to do more complex eye looks, a lip liner just really helps define everything. It helps the lip color that you apply on top last a long time. I feel like lip liners are very underrated. I know a lot of people that don't use lip liners, but I personally feel like they're very necessary. All right, so for a lipstick, if you're looking for an actual bullet lipstick, I actually would recommend just the MAC lipsticks. They have so many great colors and finishes. This would be a really great place to start in the high-end category. So I personally have the shade Faux right here, and I'm gonna layer this on top of that lip liner. Now, this is a lip combo that I would use for more special occasions, not necessarily every day. I have another product that I'm going to layer on at the end that I personally feel like is great for every day, but you can also layer it on top of lipstick, so that's why I am going to layer it on top. So yeah, the MAC lipsticks are a really great place to start with lip products. So for a gloss or for a more foolproof everyday type of a product, this is my go-to. If you're not sure about wearing lip products or lip liners or lipsticks yet, you should try this if you want something on your lips. This is the Bobbi Brown Crushed Oil Infused Gloss. I love every shade that I've tried of this, but I wanted to wear the shade Force of Nature today. I just feel like it's a good mauve brown color that would work for so many different people. But again, there's a great range in this product, so you can find anything that's going to kind of inspire you or flatter you best. So I'm going to apply this on top of the lipstick. But again, it's a great product on its own. These live in my purse. They feel like a lip balm. They kind of have a glossy finish. And they're going to give a little bit of color too. So you're not going to look like you're wearing an actual plain lip balm. It's going to be a little bit more than that, which I think is great. But it's still very beginner friendly, which I love. So now this is where I'm going to step back and assess the situation. I always personally add a little more bronzer just to make sure things are balanced out. And then for me personally, another step that I would add if you're wanting to kind of invest in a little bit more high-end products is a setting spray. I'm just buffing off the mascara marks after they dried. A setting spray really helps with the longevity of your makeup, but it also helps everything kind of melt into the skin even more and look really natural. So I actually have two that I picked out. You don't need both of these. However, if you are looking to expand your collection a little bit, 2 setting sprays actually is a good idea in my opinion. I personally get a lot of use out of one that's going to have a little bit more of a fresh or dewy smoothing finish to it, and then one that's a little bit more long wearing for those nights out or whatever it might be, or if you just need to wear your makeup for a lot of hours during the day. So the first one that's more of just like a refreshing mist, and this is also going to help smooth things out, is the MAC Fix Plus setting spray. I love this one. Again, just to kind of refresh your makeup. It's not my favorite for longevity. However, it does make my makeup look so nice when I spray that. For longevity, this is definitely my go-to. It's the Urban Decay All Nighter setting spray. This really does help with the overall lasting power of your makeup. So I personally like to layer 2 setting sprays. I know that's a little bit advanced for a beginner video, but I wanted to mention both formulas because if you're somebody who just knows, oh, I need something that's going to make my makeup last, you could start here. If you're somebody who's like, I don't really know if I want a setting spray, but I want the powdery finish to kind of smooth over, I would start here. I'm going to layer both because I'm extra. So I'm going to take the MAC Fix Plus first and spray this all over the skin. I'm almost out of this, and I'm just going to let that dry a little bit. Don't freak out if you get water droplets on your skin. This one normally doesn't spray too big of droplets, but because I'm almost out of it, I feel like it's kind of inconsistent right now. But once it's almost dry, I always take my sponge again and I use very, very light pressure, and I just press the makeup down into the skin. And this will help to get rid of the powdery finish, and it's gonna help just melt everything together and look so natural. And then I'm gonna go ahead and spray the Urban Decay All Nighter. And I'm generous with setting sprays. I feel like you want enough to really evenly coat your entire face. So I always go a little bit overboard with my setting sprays. It really helps with the longevity though, especially with the Urban Decay All Nighter. Just letting that kind of sink into the skin. I'm not gonna touch it until it's almost dry. And then I'm gonna go back in and gently set everything or I guess press everything back down with my sponge really, really lightly. The last step that I always do is set my brows, and I feel like this is such an important step, at least for me, because my brows can kind of have a mind of their own, and since brows frame the face, it's important to lock them into a certain shape. It just really helps the overall look, and it makes things look more cohesive. And my favorite brow gel is the Benefit 24-Hour Brow Setter. I've used this for years, and it is worth every penny in my opinion. It lasts such a long time as well, so you really are gonna have this for a long time if you do end up picking it up. I'm just gonna run this through the brows to lock everything in place. All right, you guys, so this completes the look that I created using what I feel like is a great high-end starter kit. This is a little bit of a level up from the drugstore version, so if you're looking for something even more natural than this, I would definitely recommend watching that video. But this is a routine, and these are products that are just going to enhance what you naturally have. Obviously, working with eyeshadow now, it's gonna look a little bit more makeup-y, but that's kind of the point of this. And you can also always remember that you can skip any steps that you want to. Keep in mind that these are just my personal opinions. These recommendations are based off of my personal taste and what's worked for me over the years. I stand behind all of these and I'm very confident in my recommendations, but the fun part about makeup is that you can customize it to anything you want it to be. So if you want to wear a bright lipstick every day, go for it. You know, it might not be the exact products that I recommended, but play with it. You know, if you're somebody who would prefer to wear a cream blush, you could add that in. If you don't really need a brow pencil, skip the brow pencil. You know, it's something that you can really adjust to fit your own personal needs and preferences and just your overall vibe and aesthetic when it comes to makeup. So be sure to keep that in mind, because that's the fun part about makeup, is being able to kind of create your own idea of what your routine looks like. But hopefully this will help you if you are kind of lost, since there's so much makeup out there. Hopefully this kind of gave you a nice little guideline as far as what I personally would recommend. So yeah, I really enjoyed filming that video. Thank you so much to everybody who watched it. I would love to know in the comments below if you guys have any beginner products that you feel like you would recommend to anybody who's just starting out in makeup, because I know a lot of you guys are very familiar with makeup. So if you want to help our fellow makeup beginners out there, please leave a comment down below recommending your favorites. And also let me know how you like these beginner type videos. I feel like it's really nice to just go back to the basics sometimes, because even if a lot of us are really familiar with makeup, sometimes it's nice to kind of strip it down to what I would recommend and just go back to the basics and go back to the basic tips and tricks that I have as far as makeup goes. So let me know if you enjoy these types of videos, because I feel like I could continue to do these beginner type videos if you have more questions on an eyeshadow look, or if you'd want me to go even more in depth on complexion or whatever. So let me know in the comments. If you're new here, hi, my name is Allie, and I would love for you to join the family. You can do so by hitting the subscribe button. And if you're already a subscriber but you want to be notified on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, click on the bell after you subscribe and you'll get a notification every single time I post. I will have all of these products listed and linked for you down below in case you are someone who's a beginner and you don't really know where to start. Hopefully that will help you guys. So be sure to check out the description before you go. And yeah, I hope you have an amazing day wherever you are, and I will see you in my next video. Love you. Bye.